Hey YouTube, what's up? Dr. T here, and welcome to the Altcoin Express and my hometown, St. Petersburg, Florida.
And you really helped a lot of people and had a lot of hammers.
So.
As someone that's been doing deep learning for quite some time now, the field is evolving rapidly. I'd be curious to hear, how has your own thinking, how has your understanding of deep learning changed over these many years?
Yeah, it's basically like when I was seeing restricted Boltzmann machines for the first time on digits, it wasn't obvious to me how this technology was going to be used and how big of a deal it would be. And also when I was starting to work in computer vision, convolutional networks, they were around, but they were not something that a lot of the computer vision community kind of anticipated using anytime soon. I think the perception was that this works for small cases, but would never scale to large images. And that was just extremely incorrect. And so basically, I'm just surprised by how general the technology is and how good the results are. That was my largest surprise, I would say. And it's not only that, so that's one thing that it worked so well on, say, like ImageNet. But the other thing that I think no one saw coming, or at least for sure I did not see coming, is that you can take these pre-trained networks and that you can transfer, you can fine-tune them on arbitrary other tasks. Because now you're not just solving ImageNet and you need millions of examples. This also happens to be very general feature extractor. And I think that's kind of a second insight that I think fewer people saw coming. And there were these papers that are just like, here are all the things that people have been working on in computer vision: scene classification, action recognition, object recognition, face attributes, and so on. And people are just kind of crushing each task just by fine-tuning the network. And so that to me was very surprising.
Yeah, and somehow I guess supervised learning gets most of the press, and even though pre-training, fine-tuning, or transfer learning is actually working very well, people seem to talk less about that for some reason.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think what has not worked as much is some of these hopes around unsupervised learning, which I think has kind of been really why a lot of researchers have gotten into the field in around 2007 and so on. And I think the promise of that has still not been delivered. And I think I find that also surprising, is that the supervised learning part worked so well, and the unsupervised learning is still kind of in a state of it's still not obvious how it's going to be used or how that's going to work, even though a lot of people are still deep believers, I would say, to use the term in this area.
So I know that one of the presidents has been thinking a lot about the long-term future of AI. Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
So I spent the last maybe a year and a half at OpenAI kind of thinking a lot about these topics. And it seems to me like the field will kind of split into two trajectories. One will be kind of applied AI, which is kind of just making these neural networks, training them mostly with supervised learning, potentially unsupervised learning, and getting better, say, image recognizers or something like that. And I think the other will be kind of artificial general intelligence directions, which is kind of how do you get neural networks that are entire kind of dynamical system that thinks and speaks and can do everything that a human can do and is intelligent in that way. And I think that what's been interesting is that, for example, in computer vision, the way we approached it in the beginning, I think, was wrong, in that we tried to break it down by different parts. So we were like, okay, humans recognize people, humans recognize scenes, humans recognize objects. So we're just going to do everything that humans do. And then once we have all those things, and now we have like different areas, and once we have all those things, we're going to figure out how to put them together. And I think that was kind of a wrong approach, and we've seen how that kind of played out historically. And so I think there's something similar that's going on slightly on a higher level with AI. So kind of people are asking, well, okay, people plan, people do experiments to figure out how the world works, or people talk to other people, so we need language. And people are trying to decompose it by function, accomplish each piece, and then put it together into some kind of brain. And I just think it's kind of just an incorrect approach. And so what I've been a much bigger fan of is having, not decomposing that way, but having a single kind of neural network that is the complete dynamical system that you're always working with, a full agent. And then the question is, how do you actually create objectives such that when you optimize over the weights to make up that brain, you get intelligent behavior out? And so that's kind of been something that I've been thinking about a lot at OpenAI. I think there are a lot of kind of different ways that people have thought about approaching this problem. So for example, going in a supervised learning direction, I have this essay online. It's not an essay, it's kind of a short story that I wrote. And the short story kind of tries to come up with a hypothetical world of what it might look like if the way we approach this AGI is just by scaling up supervised learning, which we know works. And And so that gets into something that looks like Amazon Mechanical Turk, where people SSH into lots of robot bodies and they perform tasks. And then we train on that as a supervised learning data set to imitate humans and what that might look like and so on. And so then there are other directions, like unsupervised learning, from algorithmic information theory, things like AIXI, or from artificial life, things that look more like artificial evolution. And so that's kind of what I spend my time thinking a lot about. And I think I have the correct answer, but I'm not willing to reveal it here.
But you can at least learn more by reading your blog posts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've already given out a lot of hammers, and today there are a lot of people still wanting to enter the field of AI, into deep learning.
Mm-hmm.
So for people in that position, what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when people talk to me about CS231 and why they thought it was a very useful course, what I keep hearing again and again is just people appreciate the fact that we got all the way to the low-level details, and they were not working with a library. They saw the raw code, and they saw how everything was implemented, and implemented chunks of it themselves. And so just going all the way down to and understanding everything under you, and never, it's really important to not abstract away things. Like, you need to have a full understanding of the whole stack. And that's where I learned the most myself as well. When I was learning this stuff, it's just implementing it myself from scratch was the most important. It was the piece that I felt gave me the best kind of a bang for the buck in terms of understanding. So I wrote my own library. It's called ConvNet.js. It was written in JavaScript and it implements convolutional neural networks. That was my way of learning about backpropagation. And so that's something that I keep advising people, is that you not work with TensorFlow or something else. You can work with it once you have written it something yourself on the lowest detail. You understand everything under you, and now you are comfortable to. Now it's possible to use some of these frameworks that abstract some of it away from you, but you know what's under the hood. And so that's been something that helped me the most. That's something that people appreciate the most when they take 231N, and that's what I would advise a lot of people.
So rather than run neural network,
yeah,
it all happens
yeah.
by magic.
Yeah, and it's some kind of a sequence of layers, and I know that when I add some dropout layers, it makes it work better. Like, that's not what you want. In that case, you're not going to be able to debug effectively. You're not going to be able to improve on models effectively.
Yeah, with that answer, I'm really glad that the Deep Learning.ai course started off with many weeks of Python programming first.
Okay.
And then the frameworks.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights and advice. You're already a hero to many people in the deep learning world. So really glad, really grateful you could join us here today.
So Andre alluded to a blog that he wrote, and this is the blog. I'll put the reference below. It's quite long, and there are lots of offshoots all over the place. It must have taken him hours to do this. This, obviously, if you don't know, is the famous Nature paper from DeepMind about the Atari games. I don't know that I've fully read through all this lot yet, and I probably should do, but it is quite exhaustive. You see here, he's got these code elements in for you to kind of learn what's going on. So this is obviously an important read. Anything that Karpathy puts down on paper, it's like words from God. I mean, he's tremendously intelligent, very thorough, an extremely competent and pleasurable person to have as a lecturer and teacher. One thing in passing which relates to that, I don't know whether he said it in there, he actually spent a year at DeepMind. Does it say it in here? Yeah, it's over the summer, interned at DeepMind, worked in the deep learning research group, and most recently pitched in a little with the gym. So this is what I'm currently studying, going through David Silver's courses, which I've kind of been through for the first run through, reading Sutton's book. Oh, you can't see that here. Yeah, so this is a very useful stepping stone to edge your way into this area if it interests you. Now, I hope you find this post and this 2-article series useful, and I'll be moving on to my next interviewee in the next post. Take care and subscribe and follow my journey, because there'll be tons of stuff going into this blog in the course of the year. I'll be putting up 1,000 vids before the year's out. Hope you come along for the ride. Take care.